Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we are going to learn how to answer the question for the third hour in this week, first week. Okay, so we got three questions here. So to answer the question number one, okay, so you are given only the molecular formula C4H10. Okay, so you are asked to draw the formula in the form of expanded, condensed, and skeleton. So how to answer this question? So as usual, I'm not giving you the answer, okay, but I will guide you how to answer this kind of question. For question number one, so let's say you are given this molecular formula 6,6H14, okay, and how many possible structure that can you draw from this molecular formula? So first of all, we need to draw the carbon first. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we complete the structure by drawing hydrogen. According to the rule, carbon must bond with 4 bonded hydrogen, only one bond. Okay. So we are going to complete the structure with hydrogen. So this might be our first structure. So we can label it as A. So this is structure A. Okay. So what else? What is other possibility the structure could be from the molecular formula? Okay. So we got 6 carbon here. So as we learned before, we can make it branch structure by shorten the number of carbon in the straight chain. For example, we got 6 carbon, so we can shorten the carbon by drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5 carbon here. So another 1 carbon, we place it in the middle of the structure. So how do we identify the middle of structure? So the middle of the structure is in this area. Okay, so we are going to draw another carbon on this carbon only. We cannot draw at the end of the structure because it might turn to be the same structure as A. Okay, so let's say I'm going to put the carbon here. Okay, and then the last step, we complete the structure by putting the hydrogen according to the number of bond that already formed by this carbon. So let's say this one we got 1, 2, 3, so it has 1 hydrogen. Okay, this carbon is bonded to 1 carbon and it has 1 bond, so it means it has 3 hydrogen. Okay. Okay, so this might be our B, structure B. So we already got the expanded structure, so this one is expanded. Okay, so we are going to convert. Once we got expanded structure, we can easily convert it into condensed as well as skeleton. Okay. Okay, we already convert the expanded into condensed structure, and we are going to convert it into skeletal structure. Okay, so to make it easier, actually we have to refer to the expanded structure if you want to draw the skeletal, because if you look at the condensed structure, you might feel confused, you might feel horrible because the condensed structure is quite tricky. Okay, so we just look at the expanded structure because so the structure is very clear where the location of bond, where the location of carbon, the substituent bonded to what carbon. So we can easily draw the skeleton from the expanded. So we numbered the carbon first. So we got 6 carbon starting from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So recheck your answer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. This structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 1 here, 1 carbon. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the substituent here, CH3, is bonded to the second carbon. So this one, our second carbon. So it's C. We got another C here. Okay. So this is how we answer the question number 1. So how about the question number 2? The question number 2 asks us to state the primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary carbon in the following compound. Okay. So the question asks us actually to classify the carbon. So how to classify carbon as primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary? Okay, so it is almost impossible for us to classify the carbon by looking at the condensed structure because, as I said earlier, it is quite tricky. Okay, so it is easier for you to draw it in the form of expanded first. So let's say this structure. Okay, so let's say this structure. So how to identify the class of carbon from this structure? Okay, so first of all, we have to look at carbon one by one. So let's say this carbon. This carbon is bonded to how many carbon groups? Okay, so we have to highlight here. Okay, so this carbon only has a one carbon group bonded to it. This carbon bonded to one only carbon. So it will be the primary carbon. So this carbon is primary. So you can label it on your structure. This carbon is primary. So once the carbon is primary, so the hydrogen that bonded to this carbon also is primary hydrogen. Okay, so this hydrogen also primary hydrogen. Okay, so we proceed to the next carbon here. So this carbon, okay, is bonded to how many carbon? No, it's bonded to how many carbon groups? So this 1, 2, 3. So that means the classification of this carbon is tertiary. Allah tak nampak. Tertiary carbon. And automatically, the hydrogen that bonded to this tertiary carbon is tertiary hydrogen. Okay. So how about the next carbon? This carbon. This carbon bonded to how many carbon groups? So this carbon only bonded to one carbon groups. Ni ikatan dia kepada carbon ni satu je. So that means this carbon is primary carbon, and automatically, so the hydrogen bonded to it classified as primary hydrogen. Okay, so the next carbon here. This carbon bonded to how many carbon groups? So we got 1 here, we got 2 here, and we got no. So is this carbon? No, this is not carbon. So the bond here cannot be calculated. Tak boleh kira ikatan ni. So that means it only has two bonds that connect to two carbon groups. So it is secondary carbon. So that means hydrogen here is secondary hydrogen. Okay. So how about next carbon? How many carbon groups bonded to it? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Because this is carbon, 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 carbon. So that means this carbon is quaternary carbon. Okay. So the next carbon, so the last lah. Okay. Tapi awak boleh buat lah untuk contoh yang lain ni. So the next carbon, this carbon is only bonded to one carbon group only. One. Because it has three hydrogen bonded to it. Okay. So it is primary carbon, and of course this one also primary hydrogen. This carbon also easily can be predicted. Primary carbon, this one is primary carbon. So but the question asks us to calculate how many primary carbon, how many secondary carbon. So lastly, at last we can make a note here that primary carbon, so how many primary carbon in this structure? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we got 5 carbon. And how many primary secondary carbon in this structure? We got 1 here. 1 only. How many tertiary carbon? So we got tertiary carbon 1. We got it 1 tertiary carbon. And this one is 2, right? Okay. Okay, so that's all. But okay, so the rule, or yes, the rule for the determining the class of carbon here, classified of carbon here, it doesn't apply to the double bond or triple bond. Okay, so it is only for single bond only. So let's say I'm going to draw in the form of skeleton because it is easier. And okay, so let's say how we identify the class of carbon in this structure. Okay, for this carbon, so I'm going to highlight this carbon. Okay, how many bond that bonded to carbon here? So we got 1, because this is carbon, right? 2, 3. So that means this is a tertiary carbon. Okay, so we are going to highlight this carbon. So this carbon, okay, tengok carbon ni. So it has double bond here. Kan? Awak nampak kan? Ni double bond. So bila ada double bond, kita tak boleh nak classify carbon ni. So tinggalkan dia saja. Okay, so dia tak ada kelas primary, secondary, tertiary. Okay, this carbon, how many bond that bonded to the carbon? This carbon 1, 2. So that means it is secondary carbon. Okay, this carbon also same dengan yang dekat atas tu because it has double bond. So double bond tak kira, tak achieve double bond. Kita tak boleh tengok double bond. Okay, so tinggalkan dia saja. Okay, so last carbon here, it has 2 bond that bonded to carbon group, so secondary carbon. Okay, senangnya sebenarnya nak tengok class carbon ni, primary, secondary, tertiary. Okay, and the last question number 3. Consider the following compound, classify carbon into ni pun sama, konsep dia sama je sebenarnya. Okay, the same concept for the question number 3, but maybe I can show you little bit about the trick of question. Okay, for example, if the question asks us to CH3, C, CH3, NH2, C, H, double bond, O. Okay, so to make it interesting, C, CH3, this one CH2. Okay, so we are going to classify the carbon here. So by focusing on this carbon, okay, how many bond that this carbon form with other carbon? 1, 2, 3. So this is tertiary carbon. Kita kira tak N? N tak, sebab dia bukan carbon. So ikatan dengan carbon hanya ada 3 saja. So tertiary carbon. Okay, so for this carbon, how many bond that it form with another carbon? So only one kan? So this one is primary. This carbon also same, primary. Okay, this carbon, how many bond? Kalau ikut kan satu je. Tapi boleh tak kita classify carbon ni? Cannot. We cannot classify this carbon because this carbon has double bond. Kan saya cakap tadi untuk single bond saja. Okay. And nitrogen here, boleh classify tak? Cannot. Sebab we only classify carbon and hydrogen only. Okay. So tak boleh, tinggalkan je. So ni pun sama, this carbon. Bonded to how many carbon? Okay, so it has only one bond that bonded to another carbon. So the carbon is primary. Okay, so this carbon, how many bond that bonded to another carbon? One saja kan? So primary. Okay, so that's all. So you can answer the question, tutorial question right now, supposedly.